Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, Simon thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Beehive State, which is also known as Utah. And today's date, Thursday, September 14th, 2016. Yeah, few things been happening, the past week. And sorry for the delay once again. A lot of stuff has been occurring, which is very interesting right now. And of course, we talk about the police shootings that's happening around the country. And of course, bad stuff is happening in Baton Rouge and many other areas as well. And of course, the bombings in Nice, France. It looks like to me the one world order is really going for broke. And you have all the pawns of the game being manipulated, swindled, and get duped when they least expect it. Something to really contemplate over. Because, of course, people still talk about the whole thing, what happened with Brexit, and, of course, a lot of other nations as well is doing the same thing with referendums, including Hungary, of getting out of the EU, and I know the Club of Rome is infuriated. And maybe trying to make it closer to the road to World War III. And of course, what's going on even in China, and even a lot of the Middle Eastern countries are being bombarded. And of course, we talk about Yemen and areas in Africa as well. Doesn't matter what part of the region. It's like everyone's trying to murder, kill, destroy innocent lives, which I find very disturbing, but you have to always look at the bigger picture. People just out there are just observing and doing many other things. A lot of folks are trying to lose their respect for themselves or love themselves. Have this hate, fear, anxiety, divide and be ruled. And of course, what happened in the political realm in the United States. You talk about Bernie Sanders endorsing Hillary Clinton. And many of the Bernie supporters are infuriated. There's even claimed in one article saying, is this like a so-called trick up his sleeve because he still believes, the claim, according to Medium.com, believes that she may be still be indicted. But it's a lot bigger than what it is, my friends. A lot of folks are realizing that the elections are rigged in the United States. Just an example. Big spiritual awakening is going to occur in 2016. It is accelerating. Doubtful Thomas is one end, the learned of the enlightened ones on the other. Which side do you prefer? Been doing this for a good, that's December 8th, I think. Yeah, December 8th or 6th. I think the 8th, 2013. Addressed this multiple times. People who've been listening to me for those that moment, those days, they understand where I'm coming from. Not the best podcaster out there. Absolutely not. I don't want to have my chip on my shoulder or say I told you so. That's not really my style. Always want to see things and teach and spread this message, because a lot of folks out there don't want to give you the truth. They want to give you rhetorical deceptions, lies, inaccurate information, left-right paradigms. My club is better than yours. Always got to look at things a lot broader than what they try to teach you, the bobbleheads out there. Yeah, so it's like I say, man, it's just very interesting, exciting times, and people need to prep up. But I know I'm digressing here, so forgive me. I just have to get a few things off my chest. But I will continue later on my little rants. So, let's see here. Oh, okay. Let's see here. Went through some of the links here. Mostly political related and all that, and good stuff. What's one here? Came from Activist Post. Came out today. It's here it says U.S. endorses expansion of military forces used by UN peacekeepers in combat zones. This is by Brandon Tuberville. He's on personal liberty and all that. And as it says here, and yet another step towards the establishment of a world military force that seeks peace through the absence of dissent, the United States announced its support in May for a set of principles that will allow United Nations peacekeeping troops and UN police to use force in order to protect civilians in combat zones and areas of armed conflict. How many of you recall Rwanda, the Holocaust in Rwanda that happened in 1994? I will continue on here. U.S. Ambassador for the UN and notorious warmonger against Libya and Syria, Samantha Power, stated the Kigali principles would make peacekeeping missions more effective, improve security, and save lives. Can we say wet dream? The Kigali principles are designed to make sure that civilians are not abandoned by the international community again, said Power. The Kigali principles call for countries who contribute troops to UN missions to give UN peacekeeping commanders the authority to use military force against armed actors with clear hostile intent to harm civilians without waiting for approval of the United Nations and its member states. If a commander has to wait hours and hours for guidance from capital, it means not being able to react in time to repel a fast approaching attack on a nearby village, Power added. The Kigali initiative was introduced by the United States, the Netherlands, and Rwanda in 2015. Man, oh man, oh man. According to the report from the Military Times, UN peacekeeping forces from the 29 countries signing on the principles are now required to act if civilians are in danger. 29 countries represents less than a third of the United Nations members, include Austria, Bangladesh, Belgium, Burkina Faso, Canada, Djibouti, Estonia, Ethiopia, Finland, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Germany, Ghana, Guinea, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Malawi, Montenegro, Netherlands, Nigeria, Poland, Romania, Rwanda, Senegal, Slovenia, Sri Lanka, Sweden, Togo, Ukraine, Uganda, United Nations, Uganda, and Zambia. Zambia, excuse me. Notably absent from the list of signatories is Russia, China, Iran, and Lebanon, as well as members of other anti-NATO countries. The possibility of the United Nations forces being used as a wider and seemingly more official and credible invading force is very real, especially in places like Syria, where, despite all evidence to the contrary, the United States, GCC, the West in general, said the United Nations continually harp about Assange's crimes against humanity and civilians while ignoring the crimes of the Western-backed terrorists who have run rampant across the country, displaying a clear institutional bias against the states like Syria, who operate outside of the total control of the Anglo-European, Anglo-American banking axis. Likewise, many civilians may be as worried about the UN peacekeepers as they are known on their despotic governments and warlords after trials of sexual abuse, rapes, assaults, and murders have been left in the UN's wake in places like Haiti, Congo, Ivory Coast, Libya, Mali, Sudan, and Central African Republic. I know I brought some of the stuff out on the UN soldiers doing a lot of these things to Haiti, and I remember studying this stuff in 2001. So you could say a good 14 years. Many are concerned about the growing power of UN domestic national matters, particularly after reports of recent sightings of UN vehicles being carried on flatbed trucks began making their rounds on the internet and alternative media networks. While many skeptic organizations like Snopes tried to debunk the sightings as mere transport of American-manufactured vehicles to coastal ports, manufactured by BAE. World at Daily contacted BAE and Aplaneco, who denied that the vehicles belonged to their company. Oh, yeah, sure. The Kigali principles are as follows. We, the troop and police contributing countries, following the International Conference of the Protection of Civilians held in Kigali from 28th to 29th May 2015 under the theme Protection of Civilians Through Peacekeeping from Mandates Design to Implementation, bringing together the top 30 troop and police contributing countries, the top financial contributing countries, and other stakeholders after deliberations on how effectively implement the protection of civilians mandates in peacekeeping operations pledges the following. 1. To train our troops on the protection of civilians prior to the deployment to missions. 2. To ensure that our sector and continent commanders as well as our nominees for mission leadership positions have a high level of training and preparedness on peacekeeping operations and, in particular, the protection of civilians. 3. To be prepared the use of force to protect civilians as necessary and consistent with the mandate. Such action encompasses making a show of force as a deterrent, interpositioning our forces between armed actors and civilians, and taking direct military action against armed actors with a clear hostile intent to harm civilians. 4. Not to stipulate caveats or other restrictions that prevent us from fulfilling our responsibility to protect civilians in accordance with the mandate. 5. To identify and communicate the UN any resource and capable gaps that inhibit our abilities to protect civilians. 6. To strive with our capabilities to contribute the enabling capabilities, AG helicopters to peacekeeping operations that facilitate to improve civilian protection. 7. To avoid undue delay in protecting civilians by investing our contingent commander with the authority to use the force to protect civilians in urgent situations without the need for further consultations with capital. 8. Do not hesitate to take action to protect civilians in accordance with the rules of engagement in the absence of an effective host government response or demonstration willingness to carry out its responsibility to protect civilians. 9. To demand clarity from the UN and mission leadership on our rules of engagement, including under which circumstances the use of force is appropriate. 10. To seek to identify as early as possible potential threats to civilians and proactively take steps to mitigate such threats and otherwise reduce the vulnerability of the civilian protection. 11. To seek enhance the arrangements for rapid deployment, including by supporting a full review of the UN standby arrangements, exploring a system in which earmarked units from troop and police contributing countries could be placed in readiness in order to ensure rapid troop deployment, and encouraging the utilization of partnerships with the regional organizations such as African Union and its RECs. 12. To be vigilant in monitoring and reporting any human rights abuses or signs of impending violence in the areas in which our personnel serve. 13. To take disciplinary action against our personnel and when they fail to act to protect civilians when circumstances warrant such action. 14. To undertake our own review in parallel to any after action and review in the event that our personnel are unable to protect civilians, and identify and share key lessons for avoiding such failures in the future. 15. To hold your personnel to the highest standard of conduct and vigorously investigate and, where appropriate, prosecute any incidents of abuse. 16. To better implement protection of civilians mandates and deliver on our responsibilities, we request better, regular, and more extensive consultations on mandating of peacekeeping missions. When mandates of peacekeeping missions are under review and may change, it should be also be mandatory for the Security Council to consult all troop and police contributing countries to deploy to the mission. We commit to bring our own ideas and solutions to these consultations that can strengthen the implementation of protection of civilians mandates. 17. To urge Security Council to ensure that mandates are matched with the requisite resources, and to commit to support a process that addresses the current critical resources gaps in several missions. We support a more phased mandating process that can ensure a better alignment of resources and mandates. 18. Nothing that any well-planned mandate implementation may be undermined by inefficient mobility, logistic, or support. To call for effective support of all military plans, including contingency plans, and to commit to work with the Secretary to review the current support arrangements, including possible transfer of authority over more logistical capability to the military component where appropriate. Recommend that these principles be endorsed on a voluntary basis and the signatories meet once each year to discuss how further improvement the implementation of the protection of civilians mandate in UN peacekeeping operations. Can I say a wet dream? This is one nefarious organization, a blasphemous entity, the United Nations. And all those countries that are involved are those tax dollars are at work, including the United States. I always said this in the past that the United States needs to get out of the UN and use that building that was funded by the Rockefellers as one gigantic outhouse. You know why? Because their actions are invalid than their rhetoric. And that stupid pledge, null and void, unacceptable, a total sham. When will the people learn that the United Nations is part of the One World Order network? And of course, look what happened in Rwanda. They wouldn't shoot back at the tyrants during that horrific event in the 100-day genocide, or democide, whatever you want to call it, and all the other countries that was narrated on this article. They're very pro victim disarmament. They want the people to have all their security eggs in the hands of these pathetic, ungrateful organization. This is why I'm always been pro self-defense, pro natural law. You never, ever trust the government. I'm trying to protect you. That's what they want. They want us with their hands up and being the world of underdog. Underdog, help me. That'll be the United Nations. Only happens in cartoons, my friend, not in the real world. That's how I've always been observant in these areas, and we gotta get the UN's gotta go, and one day it will crumble. It won't prevail. It will be a total failure. But just an example. That's why I always have my defaced UN flag, and it's sometimes to parade it all around everywhere I go. And I have great lectures with folks. Most of them were great. Of course, a few I assume don't really have a clue, but I tell them, go get the information and come back, we'll talk. Learn about it, then we'll talk. If not, don't bother me. But Brandon was right, you know, on this total monumental lie. That's how I gotta say about the UN. One blasphemous entity. And I am digressing, and I'm gonna stop for this particular subject. Be back in a moment. All right, the next one here come from boilingfrogspost.com, and it's Sybil Edmonds' webpage. Very good information here. This says, this is entitled "How Sentence Enhancements Increase Plea Deals to Reduce Transparency in the U.S. Justice System." It's by Katie Aguilera. It says here, most Americans today are aware of mandatory minimum sentences in federal and state criminal sentencing guidelines, and often excessive punishments they place on offenders. Well, what is perhaps is less well known in the existence of sentence enhancements in the U.S. judicial system. These are defined as facts and circumstances that, if present in your case, allowing the sentence judge to increase or enhance the sentence that normally applies to the crime. This means a sentence determined by sentencing guidelines or mandatory minimum requirements can be increased or enhanced for reasons such as any use of a weapon recalling committing the crime, repeat offenses, or the age of the victim. The increase in sentence length is then decided by solely by the judge in the case. When offenders find themselves facing such large sentences and their defense attorney is, from the start, likely to be far behind the prosecutors in knowing what the facts of the case are, it becomes all too easy for prosecutors to push and achieve a plea deal. A deal that allows for a much shorter sentence is a powerful enticement of encouraging a defendant to admit guilt, regardless of whether generally guilty or not. And that's a fact. That's very interesting about that. That's I'm a real vigilant SOB when it comes to plea bargainings. You know, truth, justice, and the goody two-shoes way to get you nowhere. Remember that, folks. Consider this from 2015 Texas A&M Law Review Report. Our criminal justice system suffers from practices related to sentencing enhancements and the resulting wave of wrongful convictions by guilty plea. An astounding 97% of federal criminal cases are resolved in plea bargains as of 2013, according to this article by Jed S. Rakoff, published in November 2014. There's links for this too, folks. You can really check it out. He adds that this is a mirrored in state felony cases, with most states showing an average of around 95% cases ending with plea bargains. Rakoff writes, in the both state and federal systems, the power to determine the terms of the plea bargain as a practical matter lodged largely in the prosecutor, with the defense counsel having little to say and the judge even less. The Sixth Amendment guarantees Americans' right to public trial with an impartial jury, but as Rakoff writes, our criminal justice system is almost exclusively a system of plea bargaining negotiated behind closed doors and with no judicial oversight. No jury of peers to hear both sides of the story and weigh the arguments and evidence, or to decide on appropriate sentence in the case of a guilty verdict. Our enhancement that carries a significant weight and is quietly being used is the terrorism enhancement. This enhancement elevates the defendant criminal record to a highest level, therefore allowing a large increase in the recommended sentencing range. According to Shane Harris, is in this July 13, 2007 article, the application of the terrorism enhancement has largely been overlooked by the media, legal scholars, Congress, and terrorism analysts. Harris writes in this article, published the same day, just figuring out how many times the government had sought the enhancement proved impossible. The U.S. Attorney's Office doesn't track that figure, but I was able to determine that judges have applied the enhancement at least 57 times in the past 8 years. I studied more than half those cases, 35, and learned that prosecutors sought the enhancement more often against domestic defendants as opposed to members of international terrorist groups. He adds this enhancement mostly common target offenders who weren't religiously motivated and often consciously avoided human casualties in their attacks that were motivated by political outrage and specifically targeted government facilities. His article highlights in the case of Daniel McGowan, who was arrested and charged on counts of arson and conspiracy in Oregon after starting a fire at a lumber mill in protest of logging operations. A terrorism enhancement was added in his case, facing a life sentence. McGowan accepted a non-cooperation plea agreement, was sentenced to 7 years in prison. In fact, Harris points out the terrorism enhancement can be applied simply because the judge in the case is convinced by the government that the crime in question was aimed at the government and that it involved or was intended to promote a specific act of terrorism, even one that was never carried out. Consider the case of Ahmad Ali, a student from Tunisia, who upon arriving in the U.S. was immediately caught up in an ongoing sting operation when he moved into an apartment wired with a recording device. Hosted a FBI undercover agent. Vasi was not one who hold back when talking about his dislike for the U.S. He was caught on tape discussing the principle that America should be wiped off the face of the earth and suggesting putting bacteria in water or in air or water supply. Not too sharp, according to this. However, when pushed into action, Abbasi refused repeatedly, as Wendy Gillis points out. In this March 2015 article, the U.S. federal prosecutor in the case, Michael Ferreira, wrote in a court submission, to be clear, there is no dispute that Abbasi repeatedly and emphatically refused to participate in terrorist and violent plots. Abbasi was arrested in a sting operation and faced a terrorism enhancement in this case. He spent months in jail, and his attorney, U.S. federal defender Sabrina Shroff, said it was apparent to her that Abbasi had not provided the evidence that the FBI needed to make its case, that he had not stepped over the line into active participation. Prosecutors told Shroff they would drop the terrorism enhancement if Abbasi agreed to plead guilty to the charges that include putting false information on an application for a green card. According to Gillis, Abbasi pleaded guilty to 2 minor immigration offenses and was deported to Tunisia. Hope I pronounced that right. Last fall, even though the terrorism enhancement was dropped, Abbasi states, "I'm still, in the eyes of the world, a terrorist." Plea deals are often sought to alleviate pressure on an already overbooked judicial system by keep cases out of court, or to protect sources such as confidential informants, undercover officers, and cooperative witnesses. But the use of sentence enhancements in cases such as McGowan's and Abbasi's raises the possibility for prosecution that is a result of a particular agenda. One possibility is that plea deals might be a sought and conspiracy cases in order to put pressure on the other defendants allegedly involved in the crime. Another agenda might be making the case for increased measures to prevent acts of domestic terrorism. If the number of defendants charged with terrorism increase, raising fear within the American public, justification can be made for even greater loss of freedom. Achieving a plea deal to keep a case out of a trial also allows for suppression of the evidence that would enter the public domain during the trial. Plea deals are negotiated out of the public's view with no scrutiny of evidence used against the defendant. This can allow questionable investigations, illegal evidence gathering, and an unknown number of innocent people being in prison without trial. Ultimately, a plea deal is an assured conviction, as it eliminates the risk of a jury finding reasonable doubt as to the defendant's guilt. This fact certainly benefits the private prison industry, since convictions will usually come with a prison sentence. According to Nicole Goodkind's article published in August 6, 2013, private prisons bring in about $3 billion in revenue annually. Interesting there, right? Even though sentences are generally shortened by plea deals, the rising number of convictions due to these deals over the past decade still ensures a viable supply of prisoners to fill private prisons. Hurrah, hurrah. CCA and Geo Group. Just give you those 2 examples. The value of this growing market isn't lost on the private industrial complex, and companies invested in this industry have taken steps to ensure it continues to grow. The 2 largest private prison owners, Correction Corporation of America, or CCA, and GEO, have become influential lobbies, spending large sums of money to affect policy that benefits the growing business of incarcerating people. Michael Cohen in Washington Post on April 28, 2015, that Correction Corporation of America stated in its 2014 annual report, the demand for our facilities and services could be adversely affected by the relaxation of enforcement efforts, leniency in conviction of parole standards, and sentencing practices through the decriminalization of certain activities that are currently proscribed by our criminal laws. For instance, any changes with respect to drugs and controlled substance or illegal immigration could affect the number of persons arrested, convicted, and sentenced, thereby potentially reducing demand for correctional facilities to house them. As long as the federal government, large corporations continue to benefit from mandatory minimum sentencing and sentence enhancements, it seems unlikely that such policies will be changed. More laws will undoubtedly arise, creating even more crime, and America will continue to house the second largest prison population of countries with most prisoners per 100,000 inhabitants. Well, 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 all hail to victimless crime laws, right? Who becue bono, who benefits? And this is why, my friends, I always push for people to go learn about jury nullification. Don't be afraid of going to court on jury duty. I hear all these people, oh, well, I have to pay my bills. I can't go to jury duty and all that. But you know what? We all have our problems, my friends. But one thing you got to learn is you are the most powerful person in that courtroom if you get picked as a juror. If you know this is a victimless crime law, for example, all these little petty things they want to manifest and have you pay the tab, you are entitled to say not guilty. One person can hang a jury, whether it's 6 in Florida or 12 in California, etc. This is really insane about plea bargains. Because why? Because what's funny about it, like on the state level or local level, they have these calendar calls, all right, which is pretty damn absurd. It's not that person's damn fault if they get harassed by food distributions, okay, to the homeless, and they got a calendar call, and the attorney and of course the judge, part of the whole corporate game. Go figure. If you look at the golden rule around the American flag or other flags, it represents a corporation. Maritime law. This is what's so disturbing. They want to just use you as cattle. The number game, sausage grinder, wherever you want to think about. That's why I'm always vigilant towards these parasites, ingrates, vultures, vampires. Throw a stake in their confounded heart, symbolically speaking. So that's why I'm always, sometimes, know when to say when. You don't go around talking about poisoning people and having the United States get wiped off the earth. And in that perspective, I do condemn the empire. That's, you gotta look at that as well. That's how I see things too. So always pay attention. If you know you're not guilty, don't plea bargain. Don't bend over for the system. They don't give two craps about you by any means. These sniveling so-called attorneys, not all, but the sniveling and grateful ones, think you're a piece of garbage when they first look at you, if you're in a well-dressed suit or not. Exercise your rights. You're an individual, not a corporate number. This is how they want you to think. Total manipulation, mind control 101. And I'm going to continue on here. Next one here came from True Activist. It says here, police killed an unarmed Native American, but mainstream media still won't cover it. And if I'm correct, who wrote this? One moment. I'll continue on. Let's say over the past few weeks, the media has been lit up with news of African American citizens, including Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, being killed under seemingly unjust circumstances by police. Since the incident, a Black Lives Matter protester killed 5 policemen in Dallas, and various protests have sprung up across the nation. While tragedies are deserving of attention and help raise awareness about police brutality, the death of another innocent man has gone relatively unnoticed. According to Indian Country Today, an unarmed Native American individual named Corey Kanash was given only seconds to react before police opened fire on him and took his life in 2012. He was suspected of stealing a car, but had no chance to defend himself before police fired on him, then later refused to give him medical attention. Oh, how astute of him. Understandably, his untimely death has sparked massive controversy. The most tragic part of the story, however, is that the injustice has received relatively little media coverage. One must ponder why, especially since Native Americans are more likely to be killed than any other race, according to the Department of Justice report. Don't don't hashtag Native Americans Lives Matters too. The 35-year-old Paiute man from Utah, who was shot by Miller County Deputy Dale Josie, was an unarmed passenger in the car, driven by his friend Dana Harns, who is white. The pair were chased in the dark before the officer called for backup, a decision which attorney Tom Farlane believes could have been what cost Kanash his life. According to McFarlane, the Native American was denied his constitutional rights when Josie and other officers neglected to provide medical attention to him right after he was shot, similar to the Fernando Castile. Okay. The constitutional right to life includes the right to prompt medical attention, especially when law enforcement is responsible for jeopardizing that right of life, McFarlane said. The deceased laid on the ground, wounded for over half an hour without any medical attention, while police waited for orders, and after he died, his body was left in the dirt until the following morning. A Pavant Post article states, Miller County Sheriff's Office personnel delayed the EMTs from evaluating Corey, and then said he was already dead, so there was no need to provide medical attention, and instructed the EMTs not to attempt to rescuitate. It's been nearly 4 years since the incident, but Dana Harns, the driver of the vehicle, can still recount the details of the evening. Reportedly, the duo had been drinking, listening to music, and driving, and was scared when the police car set after him, which is why they evaded arrest. Disappointing there. The ground was all of rocks and trees, Harns remember. I was running and fell, and I heard the cop talking to Corey, and then the ground disappeared beneath me, and I ended up in a ravine. I came up on the other side and heard 2 gunshots, and then I heard Corey scream. Looking at the road, there were red and blue lights as far as the eye could see, and I wondered why they were after us. My flight for life kicked in, and I took off and ran as far as I can go. Connor's families and friends have petitioned for justice since the horrific event took place, but have had little luck raising enough money to move the legal process forward. In the video below, it is explained. There's video links for this, you can see it yourself, folks. The hold up on progressing has been due to lack of money to fund the so dreaded legal process. We need your help. Please help us on our way to get this case back up and ready. It is time to take on the unwilling, non-cooperative Miller County Sheriff's Department. Activists have rallied for Kanash case through protests and Justice for Kari Kanash Facebook page. Musician Young Jibri even dedicated the song "What's Going On" to Kanash, calling for an answer to violence against natives. Regarding the long-held racist attitude in Salt Lake City, activist Victor Petrus said, you feel it, you experience it, most of the time is subtle. Utah is one of those states you don't hear much about, but it's the one place when police violence is happening. We want justice for the Kanash family. They have been through a lot. There is a lot of tension between natives and the police, who are almost all white. It doesn't discount any person's experience or right to a good life to state that all lives matter. Conscious tragic death deserves attention, just like Costell's and Sterling's. If you agree, please share this news and comment your thoughts below. This is just another example. I find something very disturbing. That's why I always say about their lives matter to everyone's human lives. Human lives do matter, regardless of what you look like. And it's a shame about the whole evading thing. But was it necessary to shoot him? I don't know about that. But they have the Kanash heirs has the right to be heard, has the right for justice like everyone else. If the police say it's justifiable, you better have some damn good merit. It's not going after the police as a whole. But you're going to have conniving individuals, tyrannical folks in certain institutions. And that's what we got to really look at. Even the police themselves got to look at themselves in these areas. Civilization is a dangerous thing too. But definitely, folks, spread this out to everyone you know. Even my podcast too. I'm going to put everything I'm put be my footnotes on here. And Corey Kanash, may his soul be forever free, and hopefully justice will prevail for his families, for his family, loved ones, etc. It has to be addressed. All right. Finally, it's from truthdig.com. It says it's entitled here by Sonali Kalahaktar. It's entitled A WikiLeaks Editor Talks About Julian Assange, National Security and Protecting Whistleblowers. Sarah Hansen, investigations at WikiLeaks, doesn't hold back when discussing her colleague Julian Assange and the political controversy surrounding WikiLeaks. He stated very strong. She says WikiLeaks founder Assange, noting that there's a lot of good publications coming up this year. They are keeping him busy. In an exclusive interview with Activism, a nonprofit media outlet based in Munich, Germany, Harrison discusses everything from current political strife to protecting future whistleblowers, a British citizen. Harrison makes her views on Brexit clear. It is very sad to me that our MPs can stand there and say that the United Nations is ridiculous. Well, I have to disagree on that, but I'll keep going. It shows how much we have diverted the rule of law in our supposed democracies. She also mentioned that the U.S. government attempts to extradite Assange. Her own emails have been compromised. Yeah, it's true that. Well, of course, she strongly supports fellow whistleblowers such as Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning. The actions of Manning, Snowden, and Assange are actually to do with not only higher ethics, but actually with the rule of law, particularly when it comes to Edward Snowden and the Constitution. He has actually just upholding that with his actions. And there's a whole interview. You can see it yourself. And I got to say, it was a good one. Talks about the whole thing, what's happening. And I have to agree, I have to disagree with her. Yes, it is. United Nations is ridiculous. Yes, it is. But, on whistleblowers, they, like the Snowden case, some people say he's a traitor, but you know what? What he did is just verify on what's been happening, because many of the information warriors out there, doesn't matter, Alex Jones, late William Cooper, David Icke, doesn't matter, and many others have talked about being spied on and stuff they're trying to do behind our backs. He just verified it. Just to give you an example. When it comes to government, my friends, it means control of the mind. This is why I always tell people you never trust the government. It's not saying I'm anti-government, but you gotta put their feet to the fire. And that's how going on with Julian. I find it unacceptable too. At least these folks have the balls or the courage to put it out there. We have the right to know what's really going on, and why should we be why we should be extorted with our money to hide stuff from us. That's one thing I really get ticked off on. But instead of getting angry, you take action, which these individuals did. And of course, the war on whistleblowers, the war on journalists, they call them terrorists. It's like the war on terror is a conflagration with the people. No ends, ifs, or buts, regardless of what country you're in. Okay? But check the video out. It's a good one. And like I said, overall, it was good. But I still say, yes, the United Nations is ludicrous. Ha, ha, ha. But thereafter, freedom of the press, whistleblowers have to be protected. All right, so that's enough for those areas. And I know there's supposed to be some big protests happening in multiple cities around the country. Black Lives Matter. Talking about the whole night of rage. Supposed to be happening in Salt Lake City Community College is one of them. I may put that personal liberty on there too, on that article, just to let you guys know what cities. And some people are afraid that, yeah, I'll stay at your homes and this and that. It's just another form of mind control. All right? But always be ready, be vigilant, doesn't matter. And here's the thing, to all those people that are trying to get involved in this night of rage. You're going to get duped. You're going to get screwed. Because the people who are behind this don't give a damn about you, your family, your friends, and loved ones. They act real big putting this out. Let's see how tough they are. They should go out there and without support if they want to do this night of rage. Don't be the herd conformist. How I look at Black Lives Matter is equivalent to the Anti-Defamation League, CARE, and NAACP, etc. They're all the same, including the KKK. All the same. Same garbage, different package. Completely irrelevant and unacceptable. When I do activism, I'm pro grassroots. I'm inspired to be there, not hired. I don't get paid to do that. There's a big difference between a handful of us, including myself, than those folks are getting hired, getting funded by multinational corporations and other disgusting contributors. That's how I look at it. If you're going to do this night of rage, you better prepare to receive justification, legitimate reprisal. And I'm not saying I'm condoning it. But if you choose that path, expect it. If anything happens to you, look in the mirror. No one else. Because the courts won't buy it. No one will. Doesn't matter what you look like. I want to try to put that list on there too, about the whole night of rage, about all the cities going to be here. I know Miami, New York, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, whatever you do. Like I said again, be peaceful. Use principles. Don't go on a rampage like rabid dogs because you're not going to win. And watch out for those infiltrators, plants, instigators. They all want to suck you in like a roach motel, trap you. Yep, so, and one thing I learned too, on a personal note about life, is like when you have people around that want to be drama, want to point fingers at everything, think they're better than everyone else, I find it pretty inappropriate, juvenile. Because we're not little, like, especially when you're doing this and you're still an adult, and you're acting like that. Do me a favor, take a look in the mirror, examine yourselves before complaining and be critical on everyone else. Yes, we all have our falters, our flaws. I admit it myself. I'm a human being too. If you're going to exploit it, like you're perfect, you're duping yourself. Plain and simple. And that is it, my friends. No music tonight. So feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any comments, rather it's positive or negative, or you're going to send me some information that I can find interesting, whatever you do, please correspond it with decorum. You keep me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, Free Network, and Scene.life. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3, that's a 3 itself, number 3 itself all together, at gmail.com. All right. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.